back when I was in high school, bear with me, I had my first really notable fundraising experience. So, going to the tiny Catholic school that I did, pre-K all the way through 12th grade, I was no stranger to fundraising. I had sold cookies. I had sold pies. I had sold gimmicky knives. All kinds of things just to get like new sheet music for choir. I was definitely no stranger to fundraising. So when one of my friends had the idea to form a Relay for Life team my sophomore year, which continued junior and senior year as well, I was super excited to get to fundraise for a cause like the American Cancer Society, which is where the funds go that are raised through Relay for Life, which is a volunteer-based event that happens annually in counties all across the United States. So it's a really, really big fundraiser for them. So when we're going door to door or asking fellow parishioners at church for donations for the American Cancer Society by way of Relay for Life, we had this urgency and this relatability factor that I was thinking about the other day. So 1.8 million people are expected to be diagnosed with cancer in the US in 2020. That's a huge number, and I firmly believe that that number is way too big. So when the American Cancer Society is trying to find a cure for a disease like this, it's obviously a really, really pressing cause that you want to fund and you want that to happen. So when we're going around and making those door-to-door asks, it was really easy to be relatable to people because unfortunately many, many people have lost someone to this disease. So it's very pressing and it's very relatable and very poignant to a lot of people. Now, since we're all under quarantine and we're in a pandemic right now with an expected economic impact of a recession or maybe even a depression at the end of it, a lot of people are thinking about charity. And what I found is it seems like the arts are kind of falling by the wayside, and health and human services, things that seem like they're going to have a really immediate impact, are kind of at the forefront of people's philanthropic minds right now. So let's talk about the arts during this crisis right now. Obviously, performing arts organizations are not able to fulfill their mission the way that they have been. But a lot of them are doing everything they can to adapt at the moment. So the Metropolitan Opera, for example, they normally have the Met on Demand, which I've taken advantage of for years, and I really, really love. But they've taken their Met Live in HD series, which normally happens in theaters, and they've actually put it online for free so that anyone can access it, even without a subscription. And you get access to all of the educational materials that go with it, and the cool interviews that are in between scenes or during intermission. But right below it, there is a give button. There is a donate now button. And if you're like me and you need to ignore the donate now button because you're in no place, it's easy to ignore. But if you're in a place to give, it's easy to give. So I think that that's a really great way to stay at the forefront of donors' minds right now. So Broadway in HD is kind of a similar case, and many, many museums are also doing virtual exhibitions right now in an attempt to adapt to the pandemic, whether they had such features before or maybe there's something brand new that they've put together. So along with the arts organizations adapting and changing, like we all are right now, fundraising in general is changing a lot too. So I was in a webinar the other day with the head of the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. And he was talking about, during the recession in 2008, what really, really took a hit, kind of above everything else, was annual funds. You know, major donors, though also economically impacted, they stuck around and they were still able to give. But those who make contributions annually to an annual fund had a much harder time continuing those contributions because of the way the economy affected them. So when we're facing another recession or maybe even a depression, annual funds might not be the thing to look to, as we saw in 2008. And obviously this case is totally different and not like anything anyone who's alive right now has ever seen. So obviously those major donors, people who will still be in a place to give, have to be stewarded. So a way that, love them or hate them, you steward major donors is through events. And whether that's a golf scramble or a gala or however you say it, events are really, really big fundraisers a lot of times, especially for arts organizations. So the Metropolitan Opera, using them as an example again, they actually moved their gala to an online format, making it a virtual at-home gala this year. And though Peter Gelb insists that it is not a fundraising tactic, it's definitely an effort to keep the Metropolitan Opera at the forefront of donors' minds, at the forefront of their philanthropic interests. Just because you can't go to the opera right now doesn't mean the opera is still not important. So another wonderful example is Stephen Sondheim's 90th birthday celebration, Take Me to the World, which I had the great pleasure of enjoying last night. It was all kinds of Broadway legends all coming together to film different Stephen Sondheim songs from home, just to like karaoke tracks in their living rooms. It was so amazing and so relatable. And then in between, they were making asks for a charity called A-Step. So you had this awesome relatable experience, and then they were throwing in, here's this charity, they need your philanthropy now more than ever, consider giving. So that's another really great way that an arts organization, or in that case, this charity related to Broadway, is adapting in the current circumstances. So even when we're not in a pandemic or a state of economic disarray, like a recession or a depression, the arts are a huge, huge part of the United States economy. So in 2015, for example, the arts and cultural organizations, they counted for $166.3 billion worth of the U.S. economy. So back in 2015, I mean that's absolutely huge. $166.3 billion, I can't even imagine it. So that's a really, really big part of the U.S. economy. And that's things like going to dinner at a local restaurant, or buying gas at a gas station before you even go to an event. It's not just ticket sales. So the arts are serving as a huge, huge distraction right now, and they're obviously really beneficial for mental health. They, when you look at music lessons for kids, they even help people do better on tests and things like that in school. So the arts have all of these advantages, yet I do feel like people are not seeing the arts as noble a cause right now, because they just don't seem as pressing. But with that economic statistic you saw, the arts make up such a huge part of the economy that when we do come out of a pandemic and do come out of quarantine, they're still so, so important. So my point today is, though the arts don't seem as pressing a cause, they are still just as noble as when I was in high school fundraising for the American Cancer Society. They're still just as pressing, because during this quarantine and afterwards, the arts are going to be a part of everyone's life, even if they have a hard time seeing that. So the arts are definitely a noble cause when it comes to philanthropy right now, and will always be.